Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very lucky to be the moderator today. And before we start, I'd like to introduce panelists and myself. But even before that, I'd like to thank certain people, because without them, we wouldn't be sitting over here. And that certain people, should I say, is a gender. The reason I say that is because, unfortunately, in a very male-dominated world, it's the females who are not seen, not registered, not heard of. And yet they play an important role in our lives. For example, the person who makes this happen and makes it stick is Ms. Hind Sadiqi. So I would like to thank her. The person who made this whole function happen, Ms. Dominic Mahoney, who you just heard. And lastly, and this is slightly unfair because she's part of the panel here, but I'd like to thank Her Excellency, Ms. Hala Badri, for the simple reason that she's doing something which makes the city proud and is bringing culture to the forefront and to the attention. And yes, watches are part of culture and art. Actually, I have two artists on either side of me who will be talking about their art. And yes, it is an art. It's a precise art, but it's an art. And we're going to also hear, hopefully, inshallah, from Her Excellency, who will talk to you and tell you about what Dubai is doing regarding watches. There's culture there, but it's watches. After all, this is an event regarding watches. So, shall we, if we don't mind if I start a bit with my right. And I had screwed up his name several times in my head because I do not know how to pronounce it, but fortunately, he corrected me. So may I introduce Mr. Rexhep Rexhepi, who created a watch. When I first saw it, and I am a watch collector, caught my eye. Independent watchmakers usually take a time to build up a name and reputation, but to have a watch that immediately grabs the attention is a very hard thing. So I'm looking forward to asking you many hard questions. To my left, I have a famous skydiver, watchmaker. The reason I'm screwing up on that one is because there are actually two people with the same name. Felix Baumgartner is a famous watchmaker and also a famous skydiver. But we put the skydiver aside because, we don't really care for them. We care for watches.
I'm the real one.
Exactly. And the one thing that I must say got my attention regarding your work, apart from the fact that it was, what is this? Was my first reaction. Was the fact that you worked with Max Buser on the Opus 5, which I will be asking about because this series of watches was something spectacular.
Thank you.
And, of course, last but not least, Her Excellency. I don't know what to say regarding her, other than the fact that if I go through her CV, forget about where she comes from or her gender. It's a CV that's incredibly impressive. It's something that people wish their children would actually achieve. I wish I achieved. And the fact that she's worked, for me, which is a very significant thing, that she has worked both in Abu Dhabi and Dubai with ADNOC and DO in significant positions, created a significant marketing position for them, brought them to the forefront, recognized by the government of Dubai, and said, okay, now come and do the same thing for Dubai in our culture, regarding culture. Can I start with you, Your Excellency?
Of course, thank you.
The gentleman won't be too angry. It's okay if I... Thank you very much. Tell us a bit about the cultural scene in Dubai and the UAE and how has it changed in the last 2 years?
Thank you, Mishaal, for the beautiful introduction. I really feel humbled and also a little bit intimidated, but thank you very much.
Oh, no.
Let's start with change. So in 2019, Her Highness Sheikh Latifa, another female iconic cultural icon, was appointed as the chairperson of Dubai Arts and Culture Authority. With that also came a new vision for Dubai from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, where he actually said that Dubai now needs to be a center of culture, a global center for culture, a thriving hub for artists, and also an incubator for talents. Now, with that put in place, a very high achievement that was given a very short timeline to achieve, which was by 2025, we had to look at the strategy. And we had to change our strategy, and this is where change comes in. Our strategy, if you think about it, is built on 5 main pillars. Number 1 is talent support, and I'll come a little bit later to why talent support is very important when it comes to arts and culture. And it means we look at education system, but we also look at the entire journey of the talent from 3 years old to high school to university, and then what do they do after that? And therefore, our talent support is focused on not only the Emiratis, but also the UAE residents, and also attracting international talent to come and reside and be part of the change that Dubai aspires to. The second part of our strategy is accessibility. A lot of people feel that art is actually only for the niche. A lot of people feel that watch collection is also for the niche. But today we want to say, and we want to ensure that everyone understands that art can be accessible by everyone. The Dubai and the UAE government also focuses a lot on making it accessible to people of special needs. So that's what we look at in terms of our museums, our arts events, our celebrations. Events like this, I think that it's accessible by everyone. It's so beautifully curated that it allows a mix of people to come from inside and outside the UAE, from the youth to the older generation, and creating that talk, that's very important to us. The third pillar is creative economy, and I think we'll dwell on that a little bit later. But when we look at creative economy, we look at the entire ecosystem, from being an entrepreneur to being an investor to basically exporting the creative goods. Number 4 is actually putting Dubai on the map, on the cultural scene globally. And that means that we need to relook at our creative export, we look at VAT, we look at so many other things that allows us to import, export, and put Dubai really on the map. And last but not least is our cultural responsibility. And this is again why we're here today, because it's very important that not only we preserve our culture and heritage, but we also create the path or the journey for the people who want to become watchmakers inspired by our own arts and our own heritage. So that's our strategy in a nutshell, and that has, I think in the last 2 years, has changed Dubai a lot, sticking to that strategy, sticking to His Highness's vision. And just yesterday, it was announced that Dubai is the 5th globally in terms of cultural interaction as per the Global Power Cities Index, and also the first regionally when it comes to cultural interaction.
Excellent. Thank you very much. On that note, if I turn to Mr. Rexhep, you're from Kosovo, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
That's not usually a place associated with making watches. Could you tell us a bit about your journey? And the reason I'm asking this is because I want people who are not used to the idea of people coming just specifically from Switzerland or Germany or somewhere in between, who are watchmakers, to feel that I can get it done too.
So yeah, I was born in Kosovo, and for sure in Kosovo you don't have many watchmakers or watch industry, but I was lucky because I come in Switzerland at 12, and yeah, I used to think I will have less chance to become a watchmaker, but finally Switzerland, it's an open country, and everybody had a possibility. And I think it's just about passion. So depend who you are and from which country you come, you can do. And yeah, I arrived at 12, and I start to learn about watches, doing different practice, and I became very quickly in watchmaking. And when you start to touch it and learn more, you became very quickly passionate. So.
I concur. Once you get bitten by the watch bug, it's kind of hard to give up. It's something that stays in your head and continues forever. Now I'm going to turn to the tallest member of the panel over here. You are. Maybe not in Sweden, but here in Dubai you are actually quite tall. Mr. Baumgartner, I have to ask you this question. When I look at your watches, it's not something that pops up immediately as a normal watch. Something must have driven you to come up with this idea, honestly, this genius, because it's not something that is a usual thought process. And you started early. This being different was something you started early. Could you help us, guide us through the concept and ideas, and what caused that change to make you do and come up with such a creative idea?
So thank you for having me here. Thank you very much. And my story is a little bit, is actually boring on the side of Rexhep, you know, because I come from Switzerland. I grew up in Switzerland. I am a third-generation watchmaker from my family. Grandfather IWC watchmaker. My father restores clocks. This is how I grew up, on the side of clocks. And so for me, but on the other side, I had a mother too. And my mother actually was very, and is still for sure, very interested into architecture and contemporary art. And music, contemporary music also. And so I had really, from my home place, kind of the super antique approach from my father, restoring clocks still today, and my mother looking into the future, and or living really today and appreciating the values of today. And somehow, I'm somehow a mix out of that. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to try to edge you on moving towards what I'm trying to understand, because what you created, honestly, is something unusual.
So in the introduction, the last word was change. So for me as a young watchmaker, we have to move on in watchmaking. We cannot always repeat our values, even it is very important the last 20 years that we remember the old traditional perfect values of all the detailing and the traditional watchmaking. So this is for sure, it's a whole cake. So for me it's very important that some people are keeping the values, the traditions, but me as an existing, as a living watchmaker from a family, from somehow I have a responsibility, I feel it like this, to go on, to make creating watches today with the possibilities, with the emotions, with the machines, with the materials of today. And so, but I'm not able to do that alone, because I'm a watchmaker. So this is why I found actually through my cousin, a modern contemporary artist. He made a school in Switzerland of contemporary art, and he had very good friends, and one friend of him was Martin Frey, and he's the co-founder of Urwerk. And actually, so together we started like 25 years ago to talk, to play ping pong, to say, okay, what is watchmaking today? How can we go on in watchmaking? Because to really respect watchmaking, we have to create it today. If you look into the history, you look to Thomas Tompion, Joseph Nipp, Antti Janvier, Ferdinand Berthoud, Abraham Louis Breguet, each one had an epoch, was living in his epoch and had his style, but it continues. So somehow we also have to continue. This is what we feel, and for me watchmaking today is no more just a practical thing, it's something which is personal expression, culture, art, right. And this is actually for us very, very important that we do that as good as we can. And I'm not actually a specialist in art and design. I like it a lot from my mother. but I haven't taught it, I haven't learned it. So this is why I came together with Martin Frey, and he's a learned and a very nice person, and actually very interested into watchmaking, but basically a contemporary artist. So we are the first watch company combining a watchmaker and an artist. This is somehow my excuse for the craziness of Urwerk.
I wouldn't call it craziness. I'd call it, we have a saying in Arabic, khalif ta'raf, which means be different and you'll be recognized. And to be honest, I have 2 watchmakers who really are very different and are recognized. Unfortunately, one of them has a very hard name to pronounce if you don't know how to pronounce it. But I'm sure my name is very hard to pronounce for other people. Your Excellency, I'm going to ask a very personal question. And I ask personal because you have the key to make me a very happy person. My dream, and this is where Dubai comes in significantly, my dream is to one day see a watchmaking school happen here. And it's a dream because I'd like my children to have the option of being able to say, you know what, I like this. Baba has been driving us crazy about watches. I'd like to be able to go and learn how to actually build a watch. What is Dubai doing regarding artisans and artists, and again, because this is a watch event, watchmaking?
Thank you again for a beautiful question. So again, when we say we want to look into talent support and we want to look at the education system, does the education system actually allow people to take up interest in watchmaking and watch designing? Does our education system create the jobs that are available to these people who will graduate from watchmaking schools, for example? Today, this is our role. So our role is to work very closely with the Ministry of Education, with the KHDAs of this world, with the higher colleges, higher education, to ensure that that path is created. And that needs some policy changes. It requires some interest and focus on this industry. In the last edition of the Dubai Watch Week, Hind Siddiqui, I don't know if she's here, but she actually offered us a scholarship for any student from the UAE who are interested in arts and culture. Timely entrance for Hind. So she did actually make an offer to a very prestigious Swiss school in watchmaking for UAE nationals. But when you don't have that awareness build up on the importance of watchmaking, the importance of the engineering and intricacy of watchmaking, the importance of design, jewelry kind of, design, etc., it is very difficult to propel these students to go into watchmaking and watchmaking basically design. So from our end, I think, one, we want to raise awareness. This forum in itself actually promotes that. I've seen a lot of the younger generation attending this forum. I've seen a lot of them being interested. But now we want to shift that interest. We want to shift that interest from being consumers to producers. And to be able to do that, again, we need to raise the awareness, make these schools available, even through collaboration with Swiss schools or other schools, between the government, the private sector, and the individuals and the students who can come together and say, yes, this is a profession that we would like to see. Now, it doesn't end there. So once this student goes to a watchmaking academy or the school that allows them to design and engineer and understand horology, how do we also produce that platform for them to become the entrepreneurs? Because you don't want them just to be making the watch, being a profession, and then their career ends there. You also want them to become entrepreneurs and come up with their own brands, just like Rexhep has done and just like Felix has done. It's very important to create that ecosystem that allows them to become those entrepreneurs, those creators of watches. And at the end of the day, we do want people to look at watches that are produced from Dubai, from the UAE, and goes globally. And this is where our fourth pillar comes in, which is basically creating that global reputation for Dubai when it comes to arts, culture, horology, etc.
Thank you. Rexhep, if I may turn to you. you have a fascinating history. I'm not too sure many people know about your history in terms of watchmaking, where you schooled at, where you worked at. Could you tell us? Because I think it's important, because people have an impression that you can just start from nothing and be able to create something fantastic. But it usually doesn't happen that way. There was a lot of hard work in where you reached and how you achieved the place you achieved before you launched your career. So your watch. Can you tell us a bit more about how you got there and who were the influencers?
Yes. So, yeah, for sure I was passionate 100%, but it's something I don't have only, I just have that at the end, honesty. So from, like I say, from 12, I just want to be watchmaker, I read some book and I realize how I realize you can do a watch from a block of metal. So I was fascinated about that. And you start, like I say before, to learn, and for sure you don't have just that. So you can dream, you are a dreamer, but you realize you have many of different things. So yes, you need to believe, you need to be passionate, and for sure you need to be disciplined, because you can find a place of watchmaking, for example, to doing an apprenticeship. But this is quite easy if you are passionate, but for some people can be for sure more difficult. But after that, if you want to do something, unfortunately, it's not just about having an idea or being a good watchmaker. You need really to understand more about how it works, to find your aesthetic, and this is really, for me, I think, the most complicated work. And even, you can doing a watch, but at the end, if this watch doesn't have a soul, doesn't have an aesthetic, doesn't have something special, nobody really can appreciate this. And this is, I think, for me, it was really the most complicated. And even you finish a watch, or you have an idea, you finalize, you realize this watch. This can take 1 year or 2 years, or more. And sometimes you need also to be somebody who, okay, you finish, it's one of the work has done, but at the end is nothing, because sometimes you need to redo totally because you are not happy with the aesthetic. And this is why people need to understand it's not just doing a watch, you know what I mean? So sometimes you also need to be passionate, because you can also doing one watch, you can present, you can be very happy, very proud, and people maybe not really appreciate it. And yeah, you need to challenge yourself every day, and say, okay, now what I need to do, what you need to be happy, open, to trying to learn more and to trying to build yourself. But I think really the most complicated is to be focused, disciplined, and strong in your mindset, to not let it going down, because you have hard time, and that's life, And sometimes it's going good, sometimes going down, and you really need to stay strong.
May I follow up with a question that addressed both to yourself and to Felix? Most people have this impression that I build a beautiful watch or an unusual watch, and people will come and naturally buy it. There's no marketing, there's no headaches, there's no worry. I don't have to worry about manufacturing, production, any of these issues, because people are just thinking, you make the watch, you sell the watch. Could both of you, and I leave this open to both of you, could you both tell us what type of experience is it that you've experienced, and how did you overcome it? Because both of you would be classified as independent watchmakers. And independent watchmakers are not going to have the marketing machine or the production capability that you can immediately switch on and immediately switch off. How do you overcome this? Because at the end of the day, it's everyone, and I trust you, believe me, everyone here sitting over here, at one point, myself included, thought, I'd like to build a watch. Now, assuming you could do that, which you can, the issues and headaches that we do not see, you have experienced, if you could share it with us, because again, at the end of the day, it's hard for people to understand how much of an accomplishment you've accomplished until they understand the pains you've gone through, because it's not straightforward and it's not simple.
Yeah, thank you for that question and for that point. For me, it was even tougher than that, because I started making Urwerk 5 years ago, the prototypes, and at the time, probably you remember somewhere, is that you had very strict rules in watchmaking. In the 80s, 90s, it was all about remembering the old values of watchmaking, tourbillon, all the traditional complications, and very important. I like them very much, but this is not my field. So we developed very early that parallel avant-garde view on watchmaking, the contemporary view, our contemporary view. But we were not allowed to do that. So we exhibited the first time in '97 in Basel World on heating plates, camping heating plates, like an art installation, where we put our prototypes and like heating them up. So we were telling them we are cooking up the new haute horlogerie, so the new watchmaking. So it's just you have to explain, communicate, and we had absolutely no success. So it was really super tough. So we repeated this, not with the heating plate, but we showed up again and again during 6-7 years, and we were very frustrated, because actually there was very few. The opening was very, very small, because the traditional world of Patek Philippe or Audemars Piguet, they had so strong rules out there, and we had to open up these rules. And so this was really tough in the beginning. And now somehow the younger watchmakers, they have an easier. The difficulties are elsewhere. But this is something we opened up with, not alone, with a few watchmakers, Vianney Halter, we have for the academy, we have a few watchmakers who helped to open up this way, this path. Yeah, so...
Rexhep, would you like to tell us a bit more in terms of your experience? Again, in as much as Felix's experience in terms of marketing, what type of headaches and problems did you encounter? And how did you overcome them? By the way, I want to follow up on this question, and not forgetting Her Excellency over there, because it's important to focus the mind on where we are, which is Dubai. But there is a turning point that you've experienced, and there is a turning point that you've experienced that said, okay, it's good now. Help us understand that.
You know, at the end we're doing not that much watches. So for us, it's really easy to not following that, and to think really about, okay, I have an idea and I want. You don't need at the end to make happy everybody. You're doing not that much watches, and personally, I'm just trying to be disciplined and to not feeling or to be inspired. You can be inspired a little, but not to think about. So today, if you're thinking about how some other brand communicate doing the marketing, it's not the same. And I used to meet people who advise me, and say, oh, you should doing this and this and this. But at the end, doesn't mean sense, because you doing this watch, you have some sensibility, and you just want people understand what was in the back of this watch. I think for us, we just know to doing watches. We are lucky to having some retailer who represent us. He can explain more about what we're doing, but we don't have that power to explain or to, So the only thing we're trying to do is just to be open, to trying to explain why we do. And I think for us it's better to not following that and just to present something, maybe sometime with, is not a perfection, you know, but has some soul, so has something who touch some people, and we don't think about that much, you know.
Okay.
It's more about you wake up, you have an idea, you want to go really to this idea, you want to be happy with, proud, and leave the baby and seeing how people react about that.
Very good. Sorry, again, before I go to Her Excellency, Felix, just the turning point. When was that turning point for you? For you in terms of saying, okay, now, okay, nothing is ever going to be good because you're constantly changing, there's a creative mind there, you constantly want to come up with something new. But there's a point where you go, okay, now I can focus less on the marketing because it's starting to pick up, and I can more focus on the creative side. But there has to be a switching, a point of turning. Do you recall that happening?
Okay, my journey, it was for sure in the 90s. It was very closed up. It was really, really traditional and very ruled by. So then suddenly the industry became interested. The journalists became interested into new ways, because you know, when you write an article or you do something over the 10th and 15th and 20th, 50th tour beyond, at a certain moment, you know, it becomes kind of repetitive. So that moment we reached at the end of the 90s, beginning 2000. And so what I want to say, it's not only us, me and Martin, who opened up this. It's also the whole openness of the community of watch lovers, of journalists, of the whole industry, which became curious. And we have been there on the right moment, on the right place somehow. And we presented then in 2003 a very special piece, the Urwerk 103, and that somehow on the price level of a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar, but totally contemporary looking in a totally different sculpture, time sculpture way. And that somehow created a whole noise in the Basel World Fair, and the people came and had a look and were, what is this and why? And so for me the turning point was 2003. It opened up, and then we had also we are somehow in that interest came also Harry Winston to us, have a look. And you know, they had a very important series called the Opus with individual artists, watchmakers, and so they choose us to be also actually somehow the first contemporary watchmaker artist. What we then presented in 2005 together with Opus 5, Harry Winston, Felix Baumgartner. We couldn't use Urwerk; they had to have a watchmaker name, but actually it's whatever. So, and that moment in 2005, that was really like a big bang moment of contemporary watchmaking.
You know, I would encourage everyone to go and discover the Opus series. It's a spectacular series done by Harry Winston, which I think the 15th. I think it's the 15th is the last one, and then we just petered out. But it starts by bringing new ideas with new people and new thoughts, and just makes this an enjoyable, not a timepiece, an art piece, and that's important. Now, since we're talking about art, we are in Dubai. Your Excellency, this is an open forum for what Dubai can aspire to be. In a product that we want here, obviously, otherwise we would not be sitting here. What, if I can leave it as open a question as possible, what can Dubai offer anyone who is within this world, the horological world?
Great, thank you. So first of all, I think what is important is that in 2019, we launched the long-term cultural visa under the Golden Visa. And that's one thing that we've done purposely to encourage artists, watchmakers, all alike, culturalists, to come and build their dreams here in Dubai. So if you have a 10-year visa coming from abroad, then that makes it very easy for you to come and establish your business, start your business, market your business from Dubai to the rest of the world. So that's one aspect. Now, what is Dubai doing on other fronts, or what is the UAE is doing on other fronts? If you recall, a couple of months ago, there was the Project 300 billion. The Project 300 billion was basically increasing the GDP contribution of the industries from 133 billion to 300 billion. And that includes all kinds of industrial businesses as well as advanced technologies. So that's in itself is a statement that the UAE and Dubai is very interested to encourage industries like horology, industries other than horology, to come and build up their businesses here. So for me, I think that's one statement. The cultural visa is another statement that the UAE and Dubai has promoted and is encouraging people like yourselves to come and apply for it, because it allows you to come and go, build your aspirations, build your schools here, build your apprenticeship programs here. This is something that I think is not done anywhere else in the world. Now, what else is Dubai doing? We spoke about the education system. That's something that we are investing in together with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Higher Education. We've worked with the Dubai Economic Department for the past 6 months. We've defined what the cultural and creative industries mean, and we've defined it according to the UNESCO and also according to our Ministry of Culture. So we know that it is 6 different sectors, starting from natural heritage to celebrations, performing arts, all the way to visual arts, audiovisuals and interactive arts, and design. Now, design is the largest contributor to our economy. We've done our maths, we know our numbers, we've defined the licensing with Dubai Economic Department. So we do understand that this is a great contributor to our GDP. And we believe the horology or the watchmaking industry will also be a great catalyst to the contribution to our GDP when it comes to creative economy.
The thing that I would honestly love to see one day, I'd love to see an horological school here. I'd love to see watchmakers set up over here. And I'd love to see watches made with the theme which is aimed towards us.
Yes.
I don't mean just from a marketing perspective. This is not the point. The idea is that this region has been for the longest time when I say this region, I'm not talking specifically Dubai, I'm talking within the Arab world. Has been a long time part of the scientific world, and watchmaking was part and parcel of this. I mean, in fact, the significant changes that had happened in watches was to do with 2 things which are part and parcel of us, which is one, science, and the other one is sailing. All of these interesting things that had happened in the watchmaking industry in the 18th and 19th century had to do with sailing because of time. It's important to understand time and the relative concepts of time. When we think about this, and then you start looking at the scientific side of it, it gets people excited. But it's also the art. It is, at the end of the day, the art. And when you have, when people ask about watchmaking, and you know, I'm sorry, but a lot of people make it seem like watchmaking and horology is redundant because now we have this lovely little thing called a portable supercomputer in our hand, which will tell us everything. But it's when you look at the pieces of art that's sitting on the wrist of the person. It's the thing that brings you even a moment of happiness. And on that point, please, Rexhep, tell us about the art aspect, because this is something, me personally, when I saw your first watch, it wasn't the horological side of it. It was the aesthetic side of it that just popped. How does it happen here? Because at the end of the day, it's a beautiful brain that's coming up with this idea, and it's a beautiful mechanical and artistic brain that's coming up with it. But between the two of you, and I can't tell you how, this is like, for me, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I feel like I'm sitting between Alisson and Mohamed Salah. So, it's really exciting for me. But there's an artistry there within your work that it needs to be expressed by yourselves. How do you come to that?
Sure, Badri.
Oh, Felix? Okay.
With pleasure. It's Urwerk, you are, Uruk, Urbil, Babylon, Mesopotamia, 6,000 years ago, the region here. Actually, our name is named after your region. Actually, Mesopotamia had one of the first cities known is Ur.
Oh, yes.
Ur, in today's Iraq,
Correct.
South Iraq. So in German, Ur means the beginning, the source of something, the invention. It's or the Big Bang, the Urknall in German. We have been very inspired by that name, by that crazy invention time, because at the time, 6,000 years ago, in that region of Mesopotamia, they invented how to measure time, how to be able to meet tomorrow at the same place at the same moment. And they learned how to measure, look with the sun, the sundials, the sand clocks, fire, with fire bands, like they burn very slowly. So they invented plenty of ways of measuring time. And this is Martin Frey, my associate. He came up with this inspiration, and he said, okay, let's reinvent the Swiss watchmaker tradition, and let's put it in front of that reality, of that crazy history, of that very important history. So we have starts. We started here actually in our reflections in the 90s when we started. So it comes out of a ping pong between me as a Swiss watchmaker with all the limits of the technique, the material, the machines, and Martin Frey. Frey means free in English. And he's kind of mind-free. He can fly like a bird, and I have the limits of the materials and of what I have to do it. So with this was our way how we came up with the first sketches, the first prototypes, and it wasn't actually really an idea to make a watch company. It was just an idea to make a watch for us.
Oh, very nice. That's usually a good way of doing things, because like yourself, I'm very, sorry, not you, I mean in terms of what you just said right now, it's very self-centered, meaning I want things for me. Okay? it's what drives me. And coming back again to Rexhep regarding the same idea in terms of the creativity, it's this part this is where the wow factor comes in. Please tell us a bit more. I'd love to know.
So for me, it's you have the watchmaking part. Okay, so it's something I'm inspired by a lot of watchmaker, and I really look my colleague there and another. I look for sure, but for me, I think what is important really is to be open totally, and to try just to learn every day, to see, to be interested on every form or color, or I'm totally open about that. But the thing is, in watches, you have the technical part. So at the end, you need to have something because it's useful, so you have some constraints, So you have that, but you're trying to bring something new, you know. So you need to respect the tradition, but you need to bring something new. So for me, the drawing, you can draw many of dials, many of different bridges, and sometimes you find something. And like I said before, for example, for one of my dial now, I just doing 12 dial in total. And to say frankly, I was really tired. But I just want to have something who, when you see it, you have an emotion, you know. So it's really, really tiny for me, you know. But I think the time, not to have the pressure, for example, to having one, you know, you need to present this for this day or this day, sometimes push you to run too much and maybe not to finish and to be happy with that. So for me, I'm just open. I'm trying to learn about everything, to be interested in that. But when you try, you need really to find something who give you an emotion, and for that you really need to discipline it yourself. And you know, sometimes you just feel it's good or not, you know. And sometimes for many people maybe it's good, but for you it's not good. And this is, I think, it's just complicated to find yourself and to manage yourself, to find the right time and the right choice, you know. And yeah, I think it's just about trying again. A lot of idea, you put note, and you construct slowly your own. You have dreams, you know, you have ideas, but you know, this not happen like you have something in your head and. You know, so it's just a construction of that.
I totally agree. It's a process. It's a process. It can be a very long process or even a shorter process. And when you create something new, the problem is it's never really finished. It's never really finished. But at a certain moment, when you want to run a company and you have to pay salaries and rent, and at a certain moment you have to say, okay, now it has to be finished. Now it's the right moment, but actually it's never really 100% the right moment, but at the moment you have to, okay, stop. And now you have to finish, and then you can, yeah, you can give it away, you know. So, and this balance between an artist and someone very ambitious who wants always go on with the process, not even better, but it's a process. It changes with the time also. With your humor, with your age, whatever, with the time it changes. But at a certain moment, you have to say, and this is quite a balance, very difficult to find the right moment. And I learned in the past, I learned very good watchmakers, one German watchmakers, several watchmakers, they were just too perfectionists. They never finished, and they never delivered any watch, so they had to stop at the end. It can be very, no, but it was dramatic.
Yeah, I
because really very talented people, but they never finished.
I think it's a very important thing that both of you are saying, which is basically the process and the trial and error part that you need to go through, and that's very true of all artists, whether you think of Leonardo da Vinci or Van Gogh or Klimt. All of them started with a process until they found the right technique that then became their brand, or they became their art or their piece that is finally finished. And they never knew when it finished. They never knew when was that turning point, or when was that part where you actually said, yes, this is my masterpiece. You only find out after they're gone how important that masterpiece is. And I think this is why this horology is very important to the cultural and creative industries, because this is what it's about. It's about ideation, conceptualization, and then you need to go through processes of fabrication and production and then distribution. This whole process, and engineering, of course, when it comes to watchmaking, this whole process has to be done over and over again until you get to that part where you feel now it has to be finished and now it has to go to the people. And this is something that a lot of, I'd say, the younger generation doesn't understand. I think what they're looking at is, I want to do something, I want to make a watch, or I want to make this design, and I want it to be famous the next day. No, it takes skill, and it takes work, and it takes hard work and patience to perfect a craft, and that takes time. So if I had an advice to the younger generation, it would be, if you want to go into something like this, then you have to be patient. You have to try, you have to have a process, you have to have a technique that makes you unique and different from everyone else. I love the notion that Felix and his partner said we want to work on open-mindedness and on doing things a bit differently from the old standardized way of watchmaking. And this is where the breakthrough happened, is because somebody came and they challenged the status quo and said, we'll do it differently. And this is what I advised a lot of the new younger generation to do, is be patient, go through it. Most famous artists took years to become who they are, and I think watchmaking is not just a strike of luck. It takes precision, patience, art, process, until you are there, and then you can go to the world and say, this is my masterpiece.
Can I follow up on that one? And I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate, because I want to see it. I want to see it happen here. In our mindset, in our cultural mindset, and Dubai has done, specifically Dubai, and in general the UAE, and in general the Arab world is pushing towards that. It used to be before that the world of art was something you wouldn't encourage your child into. It was something that was, it's a hobby. It's something extra. Yeah, go become a doctor or an engineer, or engineer, watch engineers. But the art part was, I don't say lost, but it was put as a secondary issue. It was something that you did as a nice little thing. Dubai is trying to push, and by creating, again, this, the fashion week, there's the other. What else can we do? What else can we see happen here in Dubai that will help change this mindset? Because this is important. Because the sad thing is that all of this beauty, and it is beautiful, whether it's what we're wearing on our wrist, wearing other clothes, our buildings, this is all part of art. How is Dubai encouraging this and making it stand so that it becomes a focal point within the art world to come to Dubai?
Listen, I always believe that numbers speak louder than anything. If anything, during the pandemic, I think this was the only sector that was not impacted. And I say that with a lot of confidence because we've looked at the numbers from 2019 into 2020. And the only number that dropped a little bit, and I'm saying it very minutely, was just in the number of people in the fabrication side of cultural and creative industries. But we maintained a positive growth, and we maintained our contribution to GDP when it comes to this sector at 4%. It did not drop. It dropped 0.01%, which is nothing to worry about. So one, how are we going to change the mindset? First of all, it starts with the parents. It's very important for the parents to understand the value of arts and culture. I once overheard or heard a BBC commentator saying that parents are encouraging their children now to go into the art side of studies. The reason for that was that they noticed that a lot of the other sides of jobs were now being automated or taken over by AI and by other robotics. But you cannot take away human creativity. It's one creative human capital that will never be automated. Designing, whether it's your jewelry or your clothing or it's a piece of furniture, it's part of everyday life, and that requires humans to be creative enough and inspired enough to come up with this art. So you said it yourself. During the pandemic, for example, imagine when you were locked up, and you did not have a book to read, you did not have a Netflix to watch a movie, you did not have any music to listen to, you did not have any time to do your own drawings or design your own fashion or stay in a place that is actually aesthetically pleasing, your own bedroom design, your own home design. This is an important aspect of our life. And if this important aspect is conveyed to the rest of the community, they will understand. And I think there is a huge awareness now, and there is a huge understanding of how important this industry is. And like you said, Dubai celebrates these things through the Dubai Watch Week, or Dubai Design Week, or Arts Dubai, or World Arts Dubai. We celebrate them. And year on year, I see the number of audiences growing, whether it's from the local community or from the global community. And if anything, like I said, numbers speak louder than anything. And that is what will shift people around when they see the dollar sign associated with what the arts and cultural industries can do. And it's a sustained, and it contributes to sustainable development in a huge way.
Thank you. I'm given a message, 5 minutes left. 5 minutes left meaning, should I open it up to the audience? Or 5 minutes left within the panel?
To the audience, I think.
Okay. I know everyone has a lot of questions for all the panelists over here, but before we even start opening it up, I can't thank all of you for coming and taking the time. Actually, this is a very enjoyable part, watching people who are interested in watch coming here. I can't thank the panelists enough who've come here, taken the time to share their experience, to share their knowledge, and hopefully in the next 5-10 minutes, if we can stretch it, give you an opportunity to ask them questions, because at the end of the day, this is for you. Sorry.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to tell Her Excellency that, dare I say this in the name of the Specialized Watch Media, what Sadiki and Hind Sadiki have created here is the best watchmaking event ever. Really is. But since 2017 at least already. Since 2017 already. And now I have a question for the two gentlemen there, both renowned watchmakers. So this is a panel that talked about the rebels of change. Felix mentioned that it was around 2005 that his brand really took off. There were a lot of new brands around popping up in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. I used to call back then that movement the technology movement. There was a lot of creativity, but 16 years later, we have almost all the brands, especially the mainstream brands, creating neo-retro, new vintage timepieces, the tyranny of round timepieces, as I call them. Of course, Rexhep is a different, is a whole different scale, 30 pieces per year. But he also started with a different case. His own case now is doing, is known by his round timepieces. So I wanted you to tell me your view on what we've been seeing in watchmaking these past years.
So yeah, for me, you know, the big artists, Klimt, Picasso, they did not create one masterpiece. Actually, what creates their value is the whole journey. It's the continuation, the process you can see in the different times they live and work and create. And only real passionate people can hold this time, because when you want to go into watchmaking, creative watchmaking, for business or only financial reasons, you will not succeed, because it's not about that. And people who do that, they get encouraged. They stop after a few years because they say it's very tough, and they don't create a continuation. They just try. They make one-shots in any directions. And these brands which popped up before the financial crisis of 2007, there was a lot of money around, a lot of buyers, a lot of collectors, and the good independent at the time, they were not able to deliver enough, and they are limited for sure. So they came up with like champignons, we say in France. They pushed came up like this, you know. And you will see in the next 2-3 years, already now they start to come again, these champignons. And so as a collector, you have to be aware a little bit about this shop. Some of them are good, not from the new ones also, for sure. So that's the interesting side, to pick the good ones. But for sure, our champion is a little bit bigger, and it's a continuation of and this continuation somehow creates, I think, the real value, and this red line creates the value of a real artist. Also, an artisan company like Urwerk, Rexhep. We have a vision. We have a long-term vision. We are not responding on a demand. So we have our expression, we have our need to express, and we do that continually, in a continuation, in a process, and this gives the value. And this is the difference you can see very quickly into new brands. If it's in the first year, you don't understand immediately, because this is the start. It can be good, can be bad, whatever, but it doesn't mean that it's continuation. So you need a few years to understand if they are really pursuing, creating value somewhere. And this is proving after 5, 6, 7 years, it will prove. You know. So this is, I hope, this is, hopefully my answer to that.
Sorry, Rexhep, would you like to?
Yeah, I think it's totally right, but I agree with you also about that, but I can speak personally, and yeah, if you see in general, when everybody started doing the same thing, maybe it's too late, so we should stop it. But personally, I have this two line. I think the watchmaking industry in general is not that open to also accept something totally new, or when you're really small, like me, you maybe not have enough energy really to keep that. Honestly, I do this with the first line, for example, and it's still there, but it was quite complex because not everybody understand it at this time. And what Felix say, I think also, I come, for example, with this new line now, more classic, but it's part of my education, and maybe next year or in 2 years or 3 years, I will come with other lines, and this is why it's interesting, because you can bring many time different thing, and
by the way, it's possible that I will do very traditional watches in 5 years, and he will go into,
totally,
sculptures.
totally.
We will see. This is a process we don't know.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if that happens, but okay. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, that's it? Oh, sorry.
What character traits did you learn from collecting watches? Because in some parts of the world, people look down on luxury watches, but rich people buy it. So most people don't understand that there's character, good character traits that you develop from educating yourself. Just one word, it could be humility, patience. I'm trying to understand this.
I leave it to you. Can I answer can the panel answer the
Go
question?
ahead. For me, it's definitely patience, but yeah.
Is it directed to me? I'm going to sound horrible, but I collect beauty. It's as simple as that. I'm not a beautiful person, but I can appreciate beauty. They produce beautiful pieces, and when it sings to you, it sings to you. It doesn't matter the value, it doesn't matter whether it's a new watch, old watch, it doesn't matter. If it sings to you, it sings to you, and you want to hear it. And again, as I said, I am also a very selfish person. I don't buy watches for others, I buy watches for me. And a lot of watchmakers hate me when I do that. And I tell them this, if it's a watch that is so unique or so fantastic, it will come to me and it will never see the light again. It goes inside the safe. I will pick it every once in a while, look at it, play with it, and put it back. Because it's that important. Sorry. And again,
So it's art.
oh God, yes. God, yes, it is art. On that rather interesting question, forgive me again, it wasn't my intention to talk about myself because I have 3 significant people here who hopefully gave you a great idea about what it is to be part and parcel of the horological world, gave you a great idea about what Dubai is trying to do, because at the end of the day, listen, we're sitting here in a city that attracts people from all over the world in an industry that is significant to us, and in a concept which is art, which is also starting to become significant in this part of the world. I am extremely lucky to have two people who are in this watch world, who have created something that made everybody pay attention to what they've done. And I have an audience here who was so attentive and so excellent in taking the time to come and listen to us talk about something we all love. So thank you very much.